Hey everybody, what is going on? My name is Eric McGrew with Eric's Tree Service in Montrose, Colorado, and also Elevated Office. Sorry, I was just turning on the Instagram live there as well. So thank you for coming back and watching this Instagram live, this YouTube live. And if you see me with the mic on Instagram, this is not connected to my phone. This is connected to my computer for YouTube. So today we are going to talk about a suggestion. I want to say that Troy Tree Guy is who recommended this to me as a topic. And so I thought I'd go over it, or at least it was kind of in this form. I don't remember exactly what he said. I couldn't find the comment for some reason. I don't know if he deleted it or whatever, but the basic comment was basically helping people to climb because I put up that post on Instagram on my reels. Let me know what you want to hear about that I can help you with climbing. And he made something a comment about climbing SRT without all the gadgets and being a more efficient climber, something along those lines. If I'm getting that wrong, Troy, Troy Tree Guy, that's not actually your name. I forgot what your actual name is. Sorry, man. Um, I know that we can go over this. So there are basically 5 steps that I try to get guys that are new to SRT or SRS climbing, stationary rope system climbing is the more modern term for it, I guess, if you want to say that or whatever. Everybody calls it SRT, SRS, whatever. Um, and it's really not that hard, but it takes diligence, okay? Because if you really want to be a good climber, especially in SRS, I mean, in any way though, but especially SRS, because you have certain benefits, but definitely certain limitations, then these are things that I really think that make people more efficient. So, one is just making sure you have all of the equipment. One of the worst things somebody can do is try to like kind of get by with it and not have all the equipment, and then they end up having issues because they're like just struggling to get it done, right? So yes, you can have a foot ascender and do the sit and step, and a lot of people do that. It will wear out your leg pretty quickly, and it's not the most efficient way to do that. I still prefer that over like hip thrusting on a moving rope system, but that's just me. So, minimal, you need a foot ascender. Maximum, you need a foot and knee ascender for sure. Yes, also when you're climbing, you can use your hand to tend your device. That's slow and cumbersome. I think that, probably 90% of the population that are SRSing or SRTing, whatever you want to call it, are using some kind of tender. So we're talking about a chest harness, we're talking about a neck lanyard, we're talking about, some device, your work positioning lanyard over your shoulder. I did a whole podcast on this, so go check that out if you're interested. So that's having the right equipment is key, right? So if you're going to do that, make sure you're doing that you have purchased all the equipment you need. Now, the next thing that I would recommend is that you actually get it set up right. So go and like set it all up. Don't just get in the tree and try to start working with it. Take some time. A lot of the devices you have to really kind of finesse, and here's the nuance. It takes a little bit of money, honestly, to get it just right for you, because it might be that you need to try a different rope with the device that you have, and I would go from more expensive to least expensive. Like, look at videos such as mine or whoever's about which device you might want to use. Are you going to use the Unisender? Are you going to use the Akimbo? Are you going to use um, the rope runner? Whatever it might be, and then start there, because that's probably going to be your most expensive thing. It's probably going to be around $300 or $400, $250 to $400 depending on what it is, especially if you're getting like the zigzag. It gets more expensive with the chicane. And then once you've figured out which device you think fits you best, then figure out the rope that fits best with it, because depending on the length of the rope, it's going to be probably more affordable for you to buy the rope that works best than just buying the device to match a rope that works best, right? Now, some of these do have adjustments, like the Akimbo. Of course, you can adjust The rope runner you can adjust, but I will say that even with the adjustments available on them, certain devices at certain body weights and things do work better on certain ropes than on other ropes. It's just an aspect of weight and friction on certain textures of rope. Okay, so keep that in mind. So try to like really get it set up. Ideally, if you can, using other people's equipment, practicing and just trying it out on that is really good. Some of it you're just gonna have to work around. For instance, like you're gonna have to figure out what the best length of your knee ascender is, and do you want a knee ascender that's a clip and step based, or do you want one that has a foot loop on it? And there's benefits to both of those. There's cons to both of those. So just kind of you know, if you once again can borrow different knee ascenders first or foot ascenders, because I want to say there's like that I'm actively using or know of, there's probably 10 foot ascenders on the market that are relevant that most people are using. Trevi says, I think people who are starting out on single line should start with a rope wrench. Purpose being that it's going to be much more familiar to them than the majority are for the majority of the time. Yeah, I agree, man. So a rope wrench and a Prusik's great. And another thing to go along with Trevi's comment is that it actually is a little bit more forgiving on ropes. Now, it's true, certain Prusik's run on certain ropes differently. But I definitely agree with Trevi. For most people, it's just more comfortable, especially if you started out on DDRT or whatever, or MRS as it's called now. So keep that in mind. Now, one thing to know is that it does have headspace situations where it's bigger, but you can get used to that. Nothing's going to be super comfortable for you in the beginning, okay? So selecting equipment is key and getting it dialed in, okay? That's like, have all of your equipment, get it all dialed in. Once again, if you can, make sure that you are actually and actively like using other people's if you can, because that gives you a better idea before you go out and spend, you know, a couple of $1,000s on equipment. Dave says, love my rope wrenches, just bought another, highly recommended. Yeah. And so we're not going to get into all the nuances of this, but you'll see people running different devices with either a rope wrench or one of the aluminum tethers or whatever. Don't get caught up in all that. Just go with the basic for getting started. Definitely make sure that you are running something that gives you the added friction that you need for SRS climbing, because it's not safe if you don't do that. That's super important, guys. Okay, so this isn't just for beginning. We're talking about how to be efficient in SRS climbing, no matter if you're a beginner or a seasoned professional. And one of the keys is making sure your device runs the way you want it to, your equipment is dialed in the way you want to, but that takes time. This is one thing that people overlook all the time. They get impatient, they want to get in the tree, they just throw things together, and it's not good for work situations, because when you don't feel absolutely in control and you don't feel absolutely comfortable with what you're doing in the tree, then it becomes an issue, okay? So definitely get all the equipment, one. Two, make sure that you have it absolutely dialed in. Okay, the third one, it actually takes like more practice and it takes more experience. So talk to other tree guys, talk to other climbers, figure this out, and that is pre-thinking the way you're going to use your climbing system. SRS climbing, yeah, and Trevi, route planning is key. Redirects, etc. Yeah, totally agree. The key, right, to being a successful and efficient SRS or SRT climbing, whatever you want to call it, or climber, is making sure that the equipment you need is on you. So if you're going to do redirects and you want to use slings, I often use like loop runners with you know, a ring or just carabiner, whatever. But I've got to make sure I have the loop runner and the carabiner on me. I often will use a what's it called? Man, my brain is an adjustable friction saver. And there's a very specific reason for that. We'll talk about it in another time. But I use that as my redirect a lot of times because it gives me more control and I really appreciate what it is that I get out of it, right? But I have to have it on me to make that work. Now, if you're not going to do that, or if you aren't thinking you're going to need redirects for a tree and then you find out you do need redirects, honestly, that's partly you didn't plan well. You should pretty much know what you're going to need in the tree. It happens every once in a while, but it's unlikely that I look at a tree and don't know if I'm going to at least need one redirect. And I'm going to have that kit on me. Now, you should also know how to create redirects and practice how to do redirects via your rope system itself. So your tail of your rope and all that stuff in case you run out of slings or whatever and you need another redirect. And you need to understand the different options for redirects that there are. Okay, this is extremely important. In fact, as part of the Elevated Office webinar, Zach Richards is going to be going over how to set up redirects, how he chooses what redirects to make, and how he gets out there to set them. Okay, so if you want that, go check out. Make sure you sign up for the webinar that we're going to do, and there will be a lot of information on that. But you've got to make sure that you are preset in at least 80% of what you're going to do in SRS climbing. So for me, and I know different people are different, but for me, this even includes like long limb walks, how I'm going to set up my rope so that I can get out on the limb all the way out there 30 or 40 feet out with, especially like if it's a shallow angle. We have a lot of cottonwoods and a lot of elm trees out here and they all roll over at the top. So there's no single like spire, main point to tie into that's above everything else. You get to a point where everything's kind of even and the highest tie-in you might have is only 6 to 10 feet above you and you're doing a 30-foot limb walk. It's pretty complicated. So I have to think about what's going to get me out there and get me back in as easily as possible because there are some nuances about SRS climbing that make it more challenging than DDRT climbing. Trevi says understanding vector forces, when to set static or semi-static redirects. Load sharing is important as well. I totally agree, man. This is something that I've gone over a few times as well. It's not just about what you use for a redirect, but how you use that redirect. Are you going to connect two branches together? Are you going to rely on the crotch only? Or are you going to rely on two vertical stems to make it stronger? Are they in compression? Are they in tension? You got to know this stuff. So you've got to pre-think how you're going to do all of this, or it can make you a very slow and inefficient climber. Worst case, it can make you have a bad fall that even if it doesn't like hurt you really bad, can really, really shake your confidence. And that makes you even slower for the rest of the day. So get to know what you're going to do and how you're going to do it at least 80% and follow that plan. You really should be planning all of your work and most of your steps from the ground first. Then when you get in the tree, you're ready to do the work and it's beneficial for you and it's practical, you're efficient, you're making money, and you're getting the job done. Now, so next, what you're gonna wanna do is you're gonna wanna make sure all of your equipment is up to proper standard order all the time. Now, I don't really mean to make this the fourth step. This is like one of the first steps you should do, but it's just one of the 5 steps, right? So don't put this in priority list. This is just 5 things you need to do. So make sure all your carabiners open and close appropriately. Make sure all of your SRS devices are running right. Make sure if you're running a prusik for like the rope runner or whatever, you're not burning your prusik cords. Make sure that everything is nice and smooth once again, and it's all clean. Not going to cause you any issues. Now, let's face it, it has to be pretty bad for a major failure. However, those sticky carabiners that are gritty and you're having to constantly babysit, or that close most of the way, but it's hard to get them open one-handed or whatever, or your rope being glazed or so dirty that you can't hardly get the device to like break loose on the rope smoothly and let you descend or tend, that all takes away your efficiencies. It makes you a much slower, and it frustrates you mentally, and it will also affect how your body energies, your physical efforts are used to get the job done. And it can wear on you a lot more than you might think. So make sure all of your equipment is in proper working order, that it's as smooth and fluid as possible. Take the time to clean all of it. Make sure that you've, of course, inspected it for safety. Make sure that if you notice certain things that are annoying you constantly, change them. For instance, forever I was running my devices, my climbing multi-cinders on just a carabiner on my bridge in the ring, and they drove me nuts because I found them getting twisted. I found them like the orientation would get out of whack and I didn't like it. I would get hockles sometimes in my rope. So I realized I needed swivels, and ever since I've started using swivels, I don't even think about it anymore. Now, I'm not saying you have to use swivels. It's just a preference that I have. But I realized it was affecting my focus and concentration on actually climbing, and it was a simple and relatively inexpensive adjustment that made me climb more efficiently, because now I'm not frustrated and fighting this rope all the time and the device and which angle it's at and me trying to swing around, that kind of stuff. Figure out what's annoying you about your system and figure it out so that it doesn't annoy you anymore. There's lots of things that we can adjust. Don't take everybody's word as the Bible. Try to figure out what it is that makes it work efficiently for you. Okay, so now that we've gotten through those four, the last is the one that most people do the least. Okay, absolutely the least, and it's probably one of the most important. So what is it that people are not doing that they should be doing? Well, they're not practicing. Like, we kind of, we've all used maybe the hashtag paid to work out, whatever. And it's true, it's a job that's physical. We get up in the tree, we do the work, and we work out, and we're practicing while we're working, right? But you have to remember that while we're working, we have 50 million things going through our heads all the time. For instance, where are the groundies at? Where is my rope at in comparison to the chipper? And if you're not worried about that one, you need to start focusing on that. Because I guarantee you, your groundies are only thinking about that 35% of the time. Okay? So you should be worried about that. Where is my rope at in comparison to the groundies? Where is my rope at in comparison to the piece that's about to drop? Is it going to get tangled in it? Where is my rope in comparison to my chainsaw? We have all this stuff going on, right? How much headspace do I have in my rigging rope? And I mean, the list goes on and on and on. This is not the time to be practicing difficult maneuvers in the tree, okay? The time to practice that is on your own time. It's the time when you take a afternoon after work, or you are on the weekends and you can do a rec climb. And here's another thing I want to say about practice. Trevi says, absolutely, the only way to get better at climbing is to climb. Go rec climbing, train for a competition, just get in a tree. You don't need paid to train. I agree. So here's one thing that I would like to mention, though, in connection with what Trevi said. What I find is that when guys go rec climbing, and I've done a few rec climbs with guys, it's a saunterly playing around, which isn't bad. I mean, you want to have fun. It shouldn't always be business all the time. But I find that they often, and this isn't everybody, I know, but often they don't actually practice trying to get where we need to get for work. Like, the time when you're rec climbing and when you're practicing is trying to push yourself further out there to get further to the tips, to get to that most difficult position that you're going to need. How to get there and set up a redirect one-handed. If you haven't experienced trying to set up a redirect one-handed, you haven't climbed far enough out, in my opinion. Because it's going to get to a point at some point where you're going to have to do that, and the only way to stay on that branch is hanging on and getting that out there, getting it through that union, or getting it set up with a sling or whatever. And you're going to have one hand working and one hand holding on. And if you haven't practiced that, first off, your arms are probably going to suffer. And second off, you're going to get really freaked out a lot of times. I'm not trying to say kill yourself in rec climbing, but I'm saying work toward those goals. Try to actually be active in the way that you are climbing. I climb with I climb with my handsaw, not really to prune trees that, I'm not paid to prune or whatever, but to try to make sure that I'm getting I'm getting to places where I can actually imagine trying to get my saw around it, right? Like trying to actually reach out there to the ends. Trevi says, got to climb with the right people. I climb alone often, but when I don't, it's with people that push me. That's it. If you're not being pushed climbing, you're not getting better, really. True, you can work on rappelling, you can work on ascending faster, you can do all that stuff, and that's great. And to be honest, I need to work on some of the cardio aspects. Owning my own business, I don't climb as thoroughly as I used to, and things like that. And with COVID, I haven't been climbing with people as much as I used to. But the fact of the matter is that when I am climbing and I'm rec climbing and I'm practicing, I'm getting out there. Now, there are some ways that you can even practice at your house, and people are like, well, maybe I don't have a big tree around my house. Well, you can practice anywhere. You can set up you can just put an anchor on the side of a porch or whatever, and you can try to walk on balance beams at different angles and different things with your rope and try to make sure your leverages are right. And it's not going to be the same, but you've got to, like, if you can just get your balance points with the arc of your rope, and if you can tend and everything your rope like you need, then it'll be way, way better for you when you're out there on branches. It's just practice, right? You've just got to practice. If you're not practicing, you're not getting better. One of the comments that I heard from Mark Chisholm a number of years ago that I loved and I repeated is, he says, if you're not swinging, you're not being productive. And I know a lot of climbers who are pretty fearful of launching off of a branch. Now, don't get me wrong. You'll never see me, well, I don't want to say never. Right now, I'm not capable of making quite the swings that Mark Chisholm is. And that guy is talented, and so are a lot of other guys. If I practiced more, I would be. But still, start practicing kicking off the trunk to swing out and grab branches further out, right? Like, most of the branches that we work with, unless they're a very specific kind of tree, aren't going to be absolutely horizontal. Most of them are going to go up at a slow angle or a steep angle. And what I find is that, yeah, I could go down to the bottom of the branch and I could lanyard up and monkey up the branch, or I could just climb up the trunk about halfway, of the branch height, and kick off real hard and swing out and grab that branch. And now I've saved myself a ton of climbing. It's simple, it's easy, and it makes climbing way more efficient. Plus, it's fun, to be honest. You just got to get past that fear aspect of it. Tree says the best part about climbing is that there is always someone who is better than you and in the world. Finding your weak spots and addressing them will only benefit you. Totally agree. If you think you're the best, you aren't, I promise. There's somebody out there. You may not have found them. They may not be a sponsored climber. They may not be a competition climber. You may never even meet them. But guess what? Somebody out there is better than you. Somebody is going to be a better climber than you are. So there's always something to learn. The great thing about the internet now is that we can learn from each other. There's plenty of people out there that are helping each other out. They're putting up tips and tricks and whatever. And, I know that Trevi just climbed recently with Zach Richards, Zigzag Man, on a job. And that was actually a work job. So that helps because it's a different atmosphere. And you learn new things about how people manage situations. If you see them managing a situation like a really stressful rig and you're like, well, how in the world did you do that? I don't feel like I could ever do that. Then ask them. And they'll tell you what mental process they go through. Some people just don't have certain headspace, and it'll take a while to get there if they ever get there. It's how much you decide to push yourself versus not. But the truth of the matter is that you can learn to a certain level no matter if you ever are willing to go to that degree that they're willing to go to, right? That's just the reality of it. So don't underestimate it. Don't use it as an excuse not to try, right? If you only make a third of the progress to what somebody else is able to accomplish, you've still progressed a third more than you already had. So it's not wasted, but you've got to be willing to do the work. That's the only way you can be efficient in climbing. Now, people look to gadgets, and some gadgets are good. I use a 3-to-1 on my system. I use the Captain Hook. I have a couple other things that I use from time to time. They aren't needed all the time, but you'll find that certain gadgets make your life more comfortable. And a huge thing that I learned early on in work at heights, not just tree climbing, working from cranes for removal, for installations, working on buildings for high, work at heights repair and maintenance. If you're comfortable in your equipment, then you're more comfortable on the job and your head is clearer and you're less stressed. Okay? So find out what makes you comfortable. Don't be afraid to invest some money in some gear. And the truth of it is that some of it you're going to buy and spend money on, you're going to be like, man, that's really not what I wanted it to be or thought it would be. Fine. Go online, go on Facebook, whatever, sell it. You're not going to get your full money back, but it was worth the experience to figure out if you liked it or not. Each person has their preferences. I know people who love the Unisender. Everybody uses the Unisender in this local area that climbs SRS. I personally hate the Unisender, but it's not that it's a bad device. It's just not my style. Trevi says the gadgets are enhancers. Fundamentals are the key to efficiency. That's it. If you aren't a good enough climber without the devices and gadgets, you're not going to be a good enough climber with them. You've just added a lot of weight to your saddle and spent a lot of money. So you've got to learn to be a decent climber without the gadgets first, and then the gadgets will make it more efficient and better for you in time. Okay? And here's another thing. Don't be quick to give up on gadgets. It's like anything. It's a tool. You have to learn how to use a tool properly. The first time you ever used a table saw, it might have scared you to death, and maybe your cuts weren't real great, and maybe the blade bound in the wood and you thought you were going to die. But with time and years of experience, now you don't even think about it anymore, right? That's how climbing tools are. They take time to master, and don't be quick to give up on them. But there are some things that you just kind of know, that's just not for me, and that's fine. You don't force yourself to use something that's too cumbersome. If you find it less efficient for you, then don't do it. It's that simple, okay, guys? So that's what I've got for today. Hopefully that was helpful for some of you. Trevi, thanks so much for your comments. I really appreciate it, man. It's nice to have other people who weigh in. I don't think I know it all, guys. I know that I have a lot to learn. I learn from guys like Trevi and Zach all the time. I'm always watching other guys that are, posting online, because no matter how analytical I am, there's always somebody that just sees something slightly different, and it's like it can blow your mind what you figure out in that time. So, but this is one of the reasons that I say consulting is important. And so some of you guys will have noticed that I've started Elevated Office Consulting. This is a consulting firm that I'm doing for tree professionals and tree companies. So if you are a climber, even if you're a groundie, you want to better your skills, let me know. We can talk about it. You can sign up on my website that'll be up here very shortly for a free consultation. We'll talk about what it is that I think that I can provide for you, and then we can talk about if you want any more sessions at that point. Also, don't forget about the webinar that's coming up. I'm going to be doing a monthly seminar, class, I guess it is, online as well, that if you're interested in, you can look at. Don't forget to check out my sponsors, Weaver Arborist, Gap Arbor Supply, Just Send It Saws. Go subscribe to Trevi's account. Go check out Parkway Trees account as well. Make sure you're signed up and following Zach Richards, zigzagman.zr. Also, go check out and follow Just Send It Sauls, who's my sponsor online. Of course, Gap Arbor Supply and Weaver Arborist. And yeah, don't miss out on the opportunities you have to learn free information, but a consultant can definitely help you out in a whole different level. So thanks guys for stopping by, and I will see you guys in the next one. Take care.